Hi, welcome back. I have another story for you. When I was a little kid, I got in a little bit of trouble and done some things that, some people might look at as being a hell raiser. I've never preferred to look at it that way. But one of the things that I recall is I was, a little guy, and I always went places with my dad. And my dad was always going to people's farms and helping them head or do other things. And we had Mr. Brown, who was a farmer down a couple miles from us. And we went in there one day down into the barn. He had a kind of a basement in the barn where he kept his young stock. And I see him down under some calves. And I said to him, Mr. Brown, I says, what are you doing? Now, Mr. Brown had always been a bachelor, and he was a farmer, of course. And so, he was not what you'd say really into kids. And he's looked at me and he says, I'm nutting the bulls. And nutting the bulls. And I thought to myself, well, that seems to be a strange thing to be doing to calves, nutting the bulls. So anyway, I said, well, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? He says, ask your father. Now, I know what asking my father was going to be like. It was going to be like, researching War and Peace. But I decided that, okay. So on the way home, I said to my dad, I said, what was Mr. Brown doing? He says, what do you mean? I says, you know what I mean. I mean, what was he doing? He said he was nutting the bulls. I says, what's that mean? He says, can't you just let that go? And I said, oh, Daddy, I need to know. I mean, I want to know, what was he doing? And he says, some calves are born and we milk them. They're heifers. And then there's cows born that aren't cows so much as they are bulls. And the difference is that instead of being milked, they have this sack that hangs down from them. And I says, yeah. I says, so you don't milk that? No, you don't milk that. He says, if you take that bag off, he says, then it becomes, they call them steers, and a steer will gain weight faster. So if you're going to use it, you're going to raise it for beef, that will help it get big fast. Wow, this seems kind of strange to me, but, okay. I says, well, what was he doing? He was putting a rubber band around him. A rubber band around this bag, this sack underneath it? Yeah. Oh, wow. I says, well, whereabouts is it underneath him? George, why do you have to ask me questions? Because I want to know. He says, well, like you have a thing you pee through, that is, at the end of that, is a bag. Oh, I says, I got something like that. Well, yeah, but that's what he's taken off. Put a rubber band around it, and eventually they come off. This seems really strange to me. I'm probably 5, 6 years old. A bag comes off. You put a rubber band around a bag, the bag comes off. Okay. So we get back to the farm, and I'm telling my brother about it. And he says, of course, my brother's older. And he says, you don't understand. He says, that's, we all got that stuff. He says, I didn't know about the rubber band and stuff, but, I says, well, what about Billy the bull? I mean, Billy was a calf that had, been born. And most of the time, if they weren't going to be milk cows, Dad sold them. And all he said was, it's not a milk cow, up until this point. So I says, well, Tommy's got one of those things. Tommy the tomcat, my cat that I had previously took skydiving, and well, anyway, make a long story short, we decided to try this little experiment on Tommy. So we went out in the barn, and my dad always kept a pair of barn boots out there. They come up to his knees, and it was sore for walking around in, inclement weather and cow crap and all the rest of the stuff. And so we get Tommy, we put his front paws and his head down into this boot. And I've got his legs spread apart like this, exposing his undercarriage. And my brother's got this rubber band, and he kind of doubles it up some, and he puts them over the little balls on the bottom of Tommy. And when he thinks he's got him on tight enough, he says, okay, let it go. Now, Tommy's been wiggling like a son of a gun. So he says, you can let him go. Well, I let him go. He come out of that boot, and he was on fire. He ran around the barn floor. He ran up the beams. He went crisscross, and he's just having a shit hemorrhage. And he runs out, and he's gone for a while. So, well, okay, we have a dog that's named Stubby. And he's got some of those too. So we decided we'd pay Stubby a call. So we go out where Stubby is, and we're looking at, we're thinking about it, and Bob says, maybe we ought to leave Stubby alone. I said, well, okay. So, but Billy the bull, okay. Well, this time I'm going to put the rubber band on. Well, Billy is, he's probably a couple 300 pounds by now, and he don't like the idea of losing his balls. So, of course, he didn't know exactly what we were doing, I'm sure. But I'll tell you what, we got the crap kicked right out of us. I'm trying to hold him down. My brother's trying to hold him. Finally, we get him down enough, and I get a rubber band around his nutsack there, and we let him up, and he kind of paws the bedding and the straw there and stuff, but, he doesn't go nuts like Tommy did. So every time I'd go out and feed Billy, I'd look down underneath him, and I'd see, and the funniest thing happened. They started to wilt, right? And they get smaller and smaller and dried up, and it reminded me of a prune. Because I'd seen prunes, Mom would have them, there. And one morning I went in to feed him, and they were laying in the box stall on the straw. Wow, I mean they fell off, right? Just like Mr. Brown was doing with his. So I knew that was probably not good to leave that laying around. So that kind of got taken away. I made sure that went bye-bye. So, all right. So I told my brother what had happened, and, it went on quite a few weeks after that, maybe even a couple months. But in the wintertime, my dad would always clean out all the stalls and take it, with some manure, and put in the manure spreader and take it out, and everything was cleaned right up. So he's cleaning out the box stall that Billy's in, and all of a sudden I hear, George! It wasn't Bob. It was, it always was me. I don't know why. I think that's profiling. I think that's what that is profiling. So I said, yes, Daddy. He says, now when my father swore, okay, which happened almost never, and up until this point in time, I don't think I'd ever heard him swear. He said, where's this goddamn animal's balls? What do you mean, Daddy? He takes the tail and he lifts it up and says, see? It ain't got any. You did this, didn't you? well, not well. He says, you put a rubber band or around those, didn't you? Just because Mr. Brown was doing it, you decided to try it. I should have known this. You know that I wasn't. You know why I wasn't doing that to Billy? Because we were going to use him for stud service. Okay? And you know what? He's no good for stud service anymore. Now, I didn't know what stud service was, but I didn't think it was a good time to ask it. I was weighing my options, and I just decided it wasn't good to do that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.